Support your state trooper.
I'm Trooper Dave Levandusky of the Indiana State Police.
State your name for us so we got it on the record.
My name's Glenn Cothran.
And what's your affiliation with the Indiana State Police?
I'm a retiree. I came on the department in 1964, was assigned to Schererville Post and later to the Lowell Post, and I retired in 1994.
And what did you do after retirement?
I worked for the Newton County Prosecutor's Office. They established a new position as an investigator, and I was the Newton County Prosecutor's investigator for about 10.5 years.
And that's where we met?
Yes.
And so what was your last position with the Indiana State Police?
I was a squad sergeant at Lowell District.
Did you have a zone or anything, or an area that you
I
worked?
had Zone 5, which at that time consisted of Newton and Jasper County.
You're holding a piece of equipment today, and you actually know the history of this piece of equipment. That's a memento, an item in the Indiana State Police Museum. And what are you holding today?
I'm holding a German MP40 9mm submachine gun.
And what do you know about the history of these kind of guns?
Well, it was manufactured after 1940. That's the M40 designation. The Germans wanted a lightweight, handheld machine gun to be used in combat. Mm-hmm. And basically, originally they went out as for paratroopers, and then the ground troops started using them also.
Mm-hmm. At some point in time, it came into the possession and control of the Indiana State Police. Where this came from and how it got to be with the Indiana State Police?
Okay, I was a firearms instructor at Schererville Post from about 1966 and at Lowell, Schererville up until 1974 actually. In the time period 1968 to 1973, we assisted, we did a lot of raids in the Lake County area, and we assisted other agencies. At about 1968, I was on a raid team assisting the ATF on a raid up in the small farms, unincorporated Lake County by Gary. Mm-hmm. With an ATF agent by the name of Russ Bauer. On that raid, if I remember right, he was raiding a moonshine still. Mm-hmm. And on that raid, we recovered several items, and one of them was this MP40. Mm-hmm. And when the raid was over, I asked Agent Bauer what he was going to do with this gun. And he told me their process of what they would do with it, take it into evidence and everything.
What were they going to do with it, though, after that?
They probably would have wound up destroying it. And at that time, we, Schererville Post, was in the process of doing a lot of raids, and I thought it would be nice to have a piece of equipment like this to take on the raids.
So you were just doing these raids as assigned officers, or was there like a group of guys or a team?
Usually there would be several officers assigned to do a specific raid established from investigation that the undercover guys had done.
Okay. But with these raids, is there some reason why they didn't call in ERT or SWAT guys to do these raids?
They didn't have them at that time.
Okay. So were you guys kind of one of the original SWAT teams, ERT teams on the...
Actually, I think we were probably the first one. Actually, in 1970, we set up 2 5-man teams. Mm-hmm. A sergeant in charge of a 4-man team. And then when we went on raids, we'd use one or both of those teams, depending on what mm-hmm. type of raid it was. But this was before that. This was about 1968. We were just assisting. We did raids on our own, We being 2 or 3 guys would raid a place with probable cause and proper paperwork and everything. But we were assisting the ATF on this raid.
And so you said that you asked the ATF agent, did you take the stuff to an ATF office or back to the Schererville post? Or?
Yes, when I asked him about what they were going to do with the weapon, I got the impression from him that they were going to destroy it. So I asked what would be the possibilities of us, the Indiana State Police, Schererville post, having this weapon to use on our raids. And he said he could take care of that. So he did the proper paperwork through the ATF, and this gun was assigned to the Schererville District, Indiana State Police. And it was in the district lieutenant's possession. He kept it in the evidence locker at the post.
Who was the lieutenant at the time?
In 1968, we had a first sergeant, Ed Moody.
Okay.
And he retired in 1970, and Lieutenant Herman Kerr was the district lieutenant.
Okay.
And he kept this weapon in the evidence locker, and it was secured at the post. And then when being firearms instructor, I would take it out to the range when we were doing firearms and
practice with it.
Yeah, practice with it, to keep proficient with it. And on the raids, I carried this gun on the raids also.
And then at some point in time, it left the Schererville post. And how did it come to leave the Schererville post? There was a little bit of an issue there.
There was an issue happening at Schererville Post back in the early 70s, and this gun, as far as I knew, disappeared.
And it had at some point in time made its way to the museum?
Well, actually, the first time I knew what had happened to it was at one of the superintendent's
retirees'
luncheons.
receptions. And you saw it hanging here.
And I saw it displayed here. And there was no information, no tags or anything on it. And I forgot about it till you sent out that email.
So
when I saw the email, I called you and asked you if you still had it and if you wanted the history on it. That's the history on it.
And we've now documented that. I was going to ask you too, you mentioned the Schererville Post and the Schererville Range. Now, being a Lowell trooper myself the first 9 years, so I used to go to the range at Lowell, but that was the Lowell Post, so I was going to Maderaeville to the range. Where was the Schererville Range at?
Schererville didn't have a range. We, again, had to manipulate things around. We used a couple different places as ranges, and the last range that we used, a farmer, actually where all the malls are at 30 and Mississippi Street.
Okay, in Lake County.
There was a dentist by the name of Dr. Smith that owned a farm in the northwest corner of Mississippi Street and Route US 30. And he was a firearms enthusiast himself, and he had built a small backstop on his farm. And I had met him, and he graciously allowed us to use his property as our range. And we shot there, we did all of our qualifications there for several years. And then as that property started developing, of course we had to quit shooting there. And then we wound up shooting, I think the last one that Schererville had was at the Willow Slough Range.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Out on the state line?
Yeah.
Okay. So you being a Schererville guy, and then the combination of Dunes Park, where would Dunes Park have shot? Do you know that?
Dunes Park had they had an indoor basement range.
In the old style post?
At the old building. And their outside range was on the state prison farm property between Michigan City and LaPorte.
Summit Farm?
Yeah,
Okay.
prison farm.
So while I got you here, since you were part of the coming together of Schererville and Dunes Park to become the Lowell Post, what year was that in?
1977, we closed Schererville Post, and they opened the new post at Lowell in October 1977, and that combined Schererville's 2 counties, which was Lake and Newton, in with the 5 counties that Dunes Park covered.
But when you came on, you said you came on in '64. There was a Kentland Post?
Yes.
So the Kentland Post, was it a sub-post? It was a sub-post, the house-style sub-post.
Kentland was a sub-post of Lafayette District. Schererville was a sub-post of Dunes Park District.
Okay, so they were both the smaller subs.
They were smaller sub-posts, and they closed Kentland Post in 1968, and Kentland covered 3 counties, Newton, Benton, and Jasper County.
Okay.
So the officers that were assigned to Newton County came to Schererville. The officers that were assigned to Jasper County went to Dunes Park Post, and the Benton County troopers went to Lafayette Post.
You personally, what would you say is probably the most interesting thing you were ever involved in with the Indiana State Police in your career?
My best arrest that I think, there was a armed robbery at St. Anne, Illinois.
Okay. Just outside of the Kankakee.
Just across the state line about 6 miles. They robbed 2 places at the same time. They were using walkie-talkies, and 2 different groups robbed 2 different places. And when they took off, they put out a description of one vehicle, a 1967 yellow Chevy with rental plates on it. At that time, Illinois rental plates started with AA and then a number. And I was in South Lake County when they put that dispatch out, and I stopped at the LaSalle Game Preserve, right just south of the Kankakee River, and put my lights across the road. And just in a few minutes, here comes this yellow 67 Chevy. So I pulled out and pulled in behind it. Well, as I'm pulling out, here comes a 65 Ford. And I realized that I was in between
two bad guys,
2 carloads of armed robbers. So we continued north in that position up till we got to the State Road 2 at Lowell. And at State Road 2 in Lowell, I turned off on Route 2. Of course, I had contacted the post and told them what I had, and told them that these cars are northbound on 41.
From the North Junction?
From the North Junction of State Road 2. So immediately after I turned off on 2, I turned back around, turned my headlights off. This was in December, it was about 18 below zero. And I followed those 2 cars without lights to just south of Cook, Cedar Lake now. And I'd called ahead, and
133rd Avenue.
Trooper George Navarre had set up, I asked for a roadblock. There's a steep grade off the road there, and I'd asked for a roadblock to stop those cars. George Navarre put a tanker truck across the northbound lanes of 41. Trooper Popplewell came around behind me.
Pete.
And Trooper Dave Hawkins. And the 4 of us stopped those 2 carloads of armed robbers. There was 5 men and 2 women. And they had M1 carbines, several handguns, and of course back then you didn't physically search a woman. You could pat her down with the back of your hand.
Hasn't changed that much.
And so we arrested all those people and took them to Schererville Post. So we made 7 apprehensions out of that one dispatch. The next morning, they all waived extradition to go back to Illinois. And the next morning, when Illinois came and picked them up, they searched them again. And one of the women had a .22 automatic in her bra. So to me, that was my best arrest. You know, the most number of people, and it was an armed robbery.
So when you came on the department in '64, you got some field training. Did you have 1 or 2 or 3 officers that trained you, and who were they?
At that time, Sergeant Ed Moody was the district commander. There was I was the 10th trooper at Schererville Post, and he allowed us to ride. There was 3 assigned trooper trainers. Bob Ayers, Mel Kuhn, and John Vanco. And there was Rudy Adams and myself were sent to Schererville. So between the 2 of us, we rode 2 weeks with each one of those trooper trainers. And then on our off-duty time, or after all the overtime you wanted, free of charge,
I've heard that a couple of times today.
Our off-duty time, we could ride with any other trooper at the post except, and the first sergeant named 3 troopers that we could not ride with. But we could ride with anybody else, so you could pretty well ride with anybody at the post.
Any one of those stand out as like your mentor or anything like that? Or who was your mentor? I mean, that helped.
They were all good. They were all good guys.
Okay.
I was of the second school of '65. Ted Knorr, Bob Rogers, and Jim Hulley was the first school of '64. So they had just got their cars about the time we were sent to Cherville. So we couldn't ride with them either.
Right.
So that was 6 guys that we couldn't ride with.
Okay. So you said you came on in '64. What class were you in?
20th
20th recruit school?
20th recruit.
So you would have been at Bloomington for training?
We were at Bloomington IU campus.
Anything else in your career that stands out as something really exciting or unique or just that you're really proud of?
You know, you asked that question, and there's so many things that was so interesting, that you learned from, that you appreciated, and that made you sick at your stomach, you know.
Yeah.
You never forget your first fatal accident. I can remember the first fatal that I covered just like it was yesterday. You never forget a good arrest that I just described to you. Some cases stick out more, that, you know, it gets to be an involved case, or you did something exceptional on that case to bring it to a conclusion. There's hard to pick 1 or 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
The whole career, in my opinion, was outstanding. I enjoyed all of it except for about 2 years. I had a downtime. And when you got over that downtime, nothing, in my opinion, nothing can beat being a trooper.
Absolutely.
I wanted to be a trooper from the time I was old enough to say, I couldn't even say the word, I called it Cooper. And so I wanted to be a state Cooper from the time I could talk till I came on in 1964.
So I know this, but where did you grow up at?
I had quite a diverse background. We originally was from Trigg County, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
My dad moved our family to Hammond in 1948. So actually I grew up in Hammond from 1948 till I went on the department in 1964. So I grew up in a large metropolitan area, and as soon as I got an opportunity, I transferred out of there and went to Newton County, and that's been home ever since.
Mm-hmm. And what's your son do?
Our youngest son, Shannon, is a deputy with the Newton County Sheriff's Department, has been for about 12 years. He was up in years when he decided he wanted to go into law enforcement. We had 3 sons, and I never tried to push them. You know, I made my decisions, let them make their decisions.
And we talked about this gun a little bit, but I mean, you have, other than you talked about you were a firearms instructor, but you also have a little bit of a passion for firearms, and maybe have had some other business dealings in firearms?
Oh, I've had a federal firearms license since 1972.
Uh-huh.
And
had a little shop on 1125
I
South?
have a little shop there. You know, I call it the back,
Back room.
And I'm willing to do business.
Anybody that you ever had as a trainee or worked for you when you were a squad sergeant, or you trained them, that ever amounted to executive staff level or primary staff level?
Off the top of my head, I can only think of one, Trooper Doug Shelton. I wound up, I believe, a captain.
He was a major.
Major?
Left as a major, yeah.
Okay, he was a major, and he just retired recently.
Yeah, last year.
Okay, Doug Shelton made it up through the ranks. Al Verbich became a pilot. Denny Ellis I saw today. It was the first time I'd seen him in probably 20-some years. I don't know what his rank was or is. He's still on, but he's scheduled for retirement.
Scheduled for retirement, yes he is.
There's been several. Can't think of them off the top of my head.
Just want to make sure there weren't any superintendents that you trained that we
You
needed.
never were in my squad.
I was
retired.
You retired right before
on.
I got there. You and Jim Wallace both left right around that same time.
Yeah.
So, well, Glenn, appreciate you talking to us, telling us the history, and giving us some history.
I'm glad
about
to share the history on this weapon.
Absolutely.
I hope you can display it in a proper way and
that is
let the public see it.
That is a fine example of an MP40.
Yes, it is.